I'd like to call to order this King George County Board of Supervisors budget work session. If we can start out with the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Anybody would like to say an invocation? Mr. Granger?
Lord, we just humbly come before you. Thank you for what you have blessed us with. As we endeavor to be good stewards of those blessings, we just ask that you provide us guidance and wisdom. Just help us to make good decisions, Lord, decisions that would be in the best interest of the citizens in this county, and just decisions that would be to the glory of your name, Lord. Just be with us and watch over us. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everyone. Next, we'll open up public comment. If there's anyone here for public comment, you will have 3 minutes and you can please approach. Seeing none. Mr. Dines, anybody online for public comment?
No.
Anybody received correspondence or anything? Okay, that was a quick one. We'll close public comment. All right, budget expenditures comparison before cuts.
So what we have here is a slide from a previous presentation, but before we had the school numbers. And so the 2023 preliminary, that has added the school in. That includes the school for their basic operating funds, as well as the funds for federal grants and for the cafeteria. So everything together is $59,283,603, which is an increase overall of $7.2 million request from the schools. If you come down to the bottom and this is before cuts. So this is pre-cuts on anything. So everything is presented. If everything that is presented, we have a total budget request this year of $106,974,094, which is a $9,572,621 increase over last year. So this week, Mr. Miller got with Ms. Cobb and myself and went over the general funds portion of our budgets and came up with some cuts. I didn't know if you wanted to talk about these or if you wanted me to talk about them.
Let me just give a general overview. So what we did is we took, a look at some of the things that we know you all had some questions about. Some of these have been placeholders. Obviously there has been a lot of discussion about the NeoGov, and we feel that maybe this is time to kind of put that on the back burner and re-look at it, maybe look at another option, possibly as I think Ms. Hahn has up there, join the state LMS. That's another, option that you can take advantage of because of the cooperative purchasing situation that exists at the state level. A couple other things. We do have the deputy fire inspector. We removed that, and we have spoken with Chief Moody about that. I think that the thought would be that we're just not there yet. You still could go forward on the revenue side, though, and perhaps that's something that you would do. You could relook at this in the mid-year range if you needed to do that. Not saying you would put any placeholders in there for that tonight or anything like that, but it would be more of a placeholder type situation that you could do mid-year to see if we're really generating that need. Parks and Recreation, we sat down with Mr. Clark, Ms. Hahn and Ms. Cobb sat down with Mr. Clark, and we did find a way to reduce some of that budget. I know there were some concerns and probably a little bit of a, I don't know if you want to call it a shock, because there was such a major kind of shift in the money going from the general properties budget to the parks budget. I think it's really important to emphasize it wasn't a deduction really to the general properties budget. It was more of a shifting of responsibility. So they didn't really lose any employees. They didn't lose any money. It was all kind of brought over to the Parks and Rec, but we did take another look, and that $49,952 is what we had recommended as reductions. We also have the community development, the abatement for dilapidated structures that has been put in budgets, but it's never been utilized. And I think we were calling for the, remove that. And then I believe the practice has always been if there is an abatement need, it was brought before the board. Only the board can authorize that a structure comes down. And at that point, you could approve on a case-by-case basis rather than having that in there. And then we reduced a number of things in economic development, just some rounding out some of the travel and rounding out some of his other program activity that I think he was trying to do, the FRA participation, and I think that was the major. HR, we did talk about just going to, we're going to just do another part-time position, or what were we going to do in that again? Oh. Yeah. What we thought about is that until we really have a good idea on the PIO, that what we thought about is that we would combine an HR function with the PIO, kind of a sharing deal. And that is what the $66,000 that's cutting Miss Samil's full-time position and then reclassifying or kind of structuring it into a position for the public information officer / doing some HR work to give her a little added a little added boost to some, they could do some of the tasks that they're looking at doing. That's it. Those are some of our cuts. I think, general properties, the plan there is, I believe that Mr. Muncie is moving and it wants to move an employee up from a groundskeeper role into a maintenance role. And then he was looking to get another groundskeeper, and we're recommending that we not do that. But I think he's able to, by moving the groundskeeper position into a maintenance role, that really is what he was hoping. That's the more advantageous one for him at that.
And this
that's our
individual,
understanding.
the individual that he's planning to move into this position is already working with the maintenance crews. And just isn't being paid as a maintenance person. And so I think he does still use it as groundskeeper. So right now in the interim, maybe kind of fill a dual role. And that he did want to add, we still left in the budget another maintenance person, but removed the groundskeeper for now.
Yeah. So that gets you about $354,000. I think the most important thing to remember again about the county side of things is you have essentially three, if you want to call them mandated situations. You have the pay increases that are the full year for the fire and rescue. You have the pay increases for the sheriff and the law enforcement side. That's the full year. And then you also have the way the way things are shaking out with the convenience centers. And so that additional, what was it, like 250,000, 259,000, I think, on the convenience centers. So that's in there. You have it. There's no negotiating that out. There's no, that's what we have to do. And so those three things make up a lot of this budget. I think we were able to reduce Mr. Clark's budget. That obviously came down a little bit, but that's what we are proposing. I know some of you all may had some other items that you might want to add, or at least have us discuss and consider.
And so before we get into the meat of the cuts, there were just some things I wanted to bring up, is that the general funded county expenditures is 37,576,569. The school's basic operations request is 55,773,965. Pending the outcome of the state budget, the schools will be requesting anywhere between $20,436,625 and $23,578,234, which is a difference between 2.4 million and almost 5.6 million. So it's somewhere in there. We don't know what the request is going to be. And of course, there's current uncertainty as the general funding expenditures awaiting outcome from the state budget. Last week, Kyle Lau from Davenport came and made a presentation. We talked about that we can no longer fund any future major capital projects with landfill revenue because we're tapped out there. And he presented us with two different scenarios. In the first one, in order to just do the remainder of the courthouse and the radio system for public safety, we need 1.75 million per year in revenues. And if we wanted to include the firehouse, which we're going to need it to do at some time, we're looking at an additional 2.34 million needed in additional revenue. So, of course, as I mentioned before, funds from the state are unknown. One of the biggest is the schools budget and the schools funding. And as I mentioned also, that I used an estimate for 3% increase in the comp board funding that we receive. And that's just an estimate. We won't know until they come up with a decision in Richmond. There's also the uncertainty on the sales tax. Now, I did watch a newscast this morning that said that they were closer on the schools or the grocery tax than they are on the schools budget. And they've come up with some estimations on how to replace that. But of course, right now, that's still uncertain. So I haven't been given any numbers on that. Our personal property values, and this is something that we didn't talk about before because I did not have any of the information from the Commissioner of Revenue's office, which I have received in the last couple of days. And so our personal property in the county is valued at $114 million more than it was last year. And then if the personal property rates remain constant, that's a potential increase of 5.2 million in revenue. And so I handed out some worksheets before we got started this evening, and those are at your desk. So I'll describe what the first one is, and this was before I had all the numbers on the personal property tax rates. And so we've taken the 55 cent, which is the very left column on there, is what the rate would be if we equalize real estate. And then from our discussions last week, we did talk about with the uncertainty that we could always advertise a public hearing for a higher rate and then drop it after the public hearing, but we can't go above what we advertise. So I had Ms. Puckett in the Commissioner of Revenue's office ran different scenarios, and those are what is listed across the top, going from 55 cents to 78 cents. And then if you notice, if you look at then as you come down, the first sets of numbers would be for the general fund with no cuts to the general fund, but level in the schools where they were last year. And then the next line down adds in scenario 1 from Davenport, and then scenario 2. Then the next set of numbers are the general fund, no cuts, with the schools, with the Senate version and what they would be requesting. And then on top of that, with the different scenarios, 1 and 2 from Davenport. Then the next set is the House version without cuts to the county, and then with the House version for the schools and the different scenarios. And then the next set of numbers go all over again, starting with general fund with cuts that Mr. Miller has recommended tonight, and then adding in the school level, the school at the Senate, the school at the House, and with the Davenport numbers added to it. And as you can see, there's a lot of red too on these sheets. So I'm giving that information to you all. And then last minute today, I put together the smaller sheet that you have. And this is the tax rate. And at the top is the tax rate that we're currently at, and showing what revenue it would generate and how much that is over what is currently in our budget this year. Working from there, originally she had provided me a few scenarios, and then I went back and had her today to run the $3 and the $3.25. As you all know, the PPTRA percentage is how much of that money that we get from the state, which will never increase, but goes to cover portions of those taxes to our taxpayers. I believe it started around like 40% and last year was 28%. So this shows you at these different rates what the PPTRA amount would be going to the citizens. So now I open it up for you all's discussion and to kind of get your guidance, what you want, if we want to go ahead and decide on advertising for a public hearing on the tax rates. And as I mentioned that you all discussed last week, that we can go high and then come down, or if you want to have a little discussion about these numbers that are in front of you. I know it's a big sheet and a lot of different numbers and everything. Of course, the General Assembly came back Monday. They fought, they went home. And so I'm thinking that they're not going to be back until April 27th, which was when they were originally scheduled to return. And the newscast that I watched today also did mention that the state legislators feel that they have until around mid-May to give us what we need to do local budgets. Which means then at the last minute, we're rushing to try to do taxes. And if we don't get it out in time, then, then there's the finance will be accruing revenues back to fiscal year 22 when we're already into fiscal year 23. So and everything's just a big. Mm-hmm.
We want to go ahead and just give you a calendar, just because I think that's something that we need to maybe have an idea of where we go. We talked at the last meeting to have y'all direct us to, I guess you'd have to have a motion, but to set the public hearing, or at least advertise the public hearing. And advertise, it's obviously the way you would do it is if you would have to set a tax rate. And if you're good with that tax rate, you're good. But obviously we're not there yet. So you want to set high because you can go low. You can't go low and go high later. You can obviously reduce at any time. So I think Mr. Dine's trying to get a big version of it. So tonight, if you did that, that would put the public hearing for the, were you saying we would need a special meeting?
Well, we need 30 days.
Right, so 30 days from
30
tonight,
days
May
would not-
6th, so it would,
Yeah, it would be after the regularly scheduled meeting.
okay.
But then again, too, another item to consider is that because the state has not settled on their budget, the May 15th date for the schools approval doesn't come into play unless they approved a budget before the 15th of this month, because you have 30 days after the date that the revenues are approved by the state to have an approved budget back to the schools.
So let's assume that the state miraculously comes to a budget conclusion between now and the earliest you could have your public hearing would be the 11th, or they could have it like on the 10th. I guess you could do it on Thursday, the 6th, but that's 30 days is what I'm,
28.
oh, 28?
Because we don't have a date in the state. So
Okay.
you advertise tomorrow.
Advertised tomorrow, okay. So you were saying always along the May 11th was a good like a
Around
special meeting. Yes, that way if you have to get this in by the 15th, then you would do that the 11th to have your hearing, and then it would be adopted, ready to go for the 15th. That's the perfect world. Obviously, that's not happening. And so if nothing is done, then you push that out. The problem is then notification to taxpayers of what the rate's going to be, that gets pushed further. That means that bills are due further out. That means you start your fiscal year in kind of a continuing scenario of what you have, which means, obviously you can come back and do what you got to do to adopt, but that's going to cut us back for a while on our revenue, whatever revenue capacity we have. So a lot of things to consider.
Mr. Chairman?
Questions?
Yes, please.
Mr. Collins?
So the sheriff 657 is only for compensation?
It's partially for compensation and a few other things. We did, if you remember, took out his big request and going to use ARP funds for that, which was the replacement of the vehicles.
So other than the compensation, what did it 657 include?
Well, and it's not just the sheriff, it's the sheriff's office, it's the E911 and the
Administrative.
and the animal control.
Animal control and administrative people.
Well, that's included in the sheriff's office.
Okay.
So, and at any given time, your salaries change, and he's had some reduction in some areas and increases in the others. I didn't bring my book, did I? Where I have everything written down.
Oh.
I think that's still upstairs.
I was going to say, well, we can put that stuff.
Oh. And two, like last year, there would have been some capital expenditures, or not capital, but large purchases that aren't in this year's budget. Because last year he did get 3 or 4 new vehicles in the budget, as well as replacement chairs and other items for E911. There were things also, I think, for animal control last year. So it's a whole gambit of different items that make up that specifically. If,
So it's chairs.
well, I mean, it's kind of everything you're
Well,
changing.
how much is the revenue? How much is the compensation? You know, that answer.
Was it 3 something? 329?
Do you have, which year do you have up? So let's see.
Mr. Miller, while she's looking at that.
Yes.
Do I have a chance to ask a couple questions? Okay, thank you. So the Public Works and these other ones, do all this budget include making sure that every employee is at least making the poverty level? I mean, the federal poverty level, 31,000?
I believe that is the case, is it not? We did not do that? We did not include that? I guess we would need, direction from the board to do that on everybody. Because we do have some people that are, 14, whatever they're falling underneath that 31, but that did not include the,
Full-time employees I was speaking of.
yes, I know.
So
They're still looking. We can get you that answer.
the 301,000 for the Public Works increase includes what?
The Public Works or Parks and Recreation?
Public Works?
We don't have a Public Works department, is it?
That's what it says, Public Works. 301,409.
Well,
Public Works includes engineering,
okay.
the landfill, the convenience center, and general properties.
Okay. So
Sorry, I wasn't looking at what you might have been looking at.
So what are those 301,409?
Mostly that increase would be landfill.
For what?
The most of it would be the landfill
For what?
for the operations of the convenience center above and beyond what we've had to take on this year because of it's grinding the brush, handling the tires, having someone come and take away the refrigerant from the refrigerators. All of that was done previously by Waste Management, and after an inspection earlier this year, it was determined that information was those things were supposed to be handled by the county and not Waste Management. And so beginning this year, we had to take on those expenses.
So the juvenile, that's a set fee. You can't get away from that 161.
Well, the juvenile center and the regional jail are included together, and those are based on population.
So that's a set fee.
That's a set fee. It's estimated set fee on the number on past usage, number of days and that are utilized by King George County, either citizens or people who have maybe from another jurisdiction and who have come into King George County and committed a crime, and they've come before our judges here in the county, and so they're sent up to the jail on behalf of King George County, not so that it's not based on where they live.
I understand all that.
So it's a
It's a set fee.
yes and no. It's
Well, what I'm saying is,
that fee,
okay,
and then at the
can't get
end of
away
the
from it. You
year,
can't cut it.
you cannot cut it.
Okay, that's
And it
all.
could-
That's all I needed to know.
Okay, and you could come back and pay more
Okay.
after the end of the year.
So the library, the 380,000. What's that additional? For?
They get additional revenue from the state. So their state revenue. So the sheet that you have in front of you is from all fund sources, not just general funds.
But it's an increase in the,
So,
that's what I'm looking at. So it's an increase in their budget of 380,000.
But it'll be reflected in a revenue increase as well. So it's an offset.
So what's the difference between the revenue?
That means they're getting more from the state, correct?
But how much is King George putting into the more? You know,
so
Sir?
I do apologize. I didn't bring the big sheets tonight to prepare to. This was just kind of an informational, just to let you see what the overall. Generally, when we come back and present the proposed budget, we'll bring all that back again. It's just right now. It's just letting you know what everything the way it is right now. This is what our budget is estimated at.
So were we talking about cuts tonight? So I kind of need to know that information. So the fire and rescue, is that all compensation? 1,300,000?
The majority of it is yes.
So how much is compensation?
I would say 95% of it, probably 90 to 95%.
Compensation and new positions?
So it's based on what the compensation plan is that was put into place for this fiscal year.
Tracking, just
And then
when
they're
you
on
consider
top of
that 95%, was that both
Up.
compensation, because there's a request for new positions as well.
Right.
And so were you rolling that into the
the new
95%
positions are being added at
mid-year?
new step plan.
Yes. But it's an increase in their
Yes.
budget request.
Yes.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
don't
so that,
understand. So how much is the,
You want to know the delta between they've requested X number of dollars and it's Y number of dollars for doing the pay increases. And you want to know what is X minus Y. So you know how much is increased for the running of the fire and rescue is what you're asking is my understanding. Is that correct?
yes, sir?
Okay. Does that make sense? But we can't, okay.
yes, but
And of course, I have the same questions for the on down the board, the 262 for social services. Is there compensation in there, or what is that for?
so part of that is that they have 100,000 of that is for a increase in Child Services Act. And that is revenues come in at 64% of that is state funded, where the other 64 and 36 around there. And social services budget revenues are always hard to predict because that also depends on state budget. But there are a couple of their lines which are public assistance and public assistance and
So over the 100,
purchase services. And they
over the
started
100,000 that you speak of, the 62,000, what's that for?
100,000 for CSA. Then there a new program that they have called Fostering Futures and a lot of their programs are mandated and each different piece has a different reimbursement rate. And so these are just expenditures. This isn't looking at the revenue side, but we do some calculations based on past history on what the state and what the federal government gives. For a lot of the items, the federal government reimburses 85%, or between the federal government and the state reimburse 85%, and the local match is 15%. And then they also have some other funding that is at a higher local match of 60 some, where the state only does, or the federal does 33%. But all that is also a moving target. And their numbers are estimated. And a lot of their items, if they don't use it, it's a kind of a wash between the revenue and the expenditure. So if they don't use the funds, if they don't spend them, then you're gonna see a lower side on the expenditures as well as on the revenue side. So it's makes up a lot of different things. And I believe back on March 10th, we did send out the budget summary sheet for each and every department to you all, that showed, and it has the comparison between the current year and past year, didn't it? Doesn't it have that on there?
The current year and the 2023.
For the current year that we're in and the
Right.
new budget year that we're working on.
So the constitutional officers, 213, what does that include?
The constitutional officers make up it's, you take the commissioner of revenue, the treasurer's office, the Commonwealth attorney, the clerk of the court. We also lump in there with the registrar. So the bulk of that is based more so on compensation, because you have all these different, there are some additional operational supplies that they need. But I know that we had done some things with salaries and based on as like the government as a whole, when you get an increase in the current year, that has to be realized in the next year, where those numbers they were in another budget line for non-departmental for any pay increases that took place in fiscal year 22. And those were only half year, have to be realized whole year.
So the 213 is compensation?
I'd say the
I think that
major.
there's also the building and there's the building improvements.
Improvements are coming out of another
No, we took
fund.
that out for art.
Art.
But I mean, it's a combination of other things as well, like inflation. So some of it is supplies. Your paper costs are going up, your rental is going up. Just a lot of different the systems that they have to use are the outside companies that do certain things for different departments to maintain their systems. Like I believe when Ms. Hart was here, she talked about her Stonewall Technologies and what she needs for valuing the personal property. Those systems maintenance goes up every year on those.
Didn't really.
Hmm?
I understand what you're telling me, but I'm trying to get some specific numbers to determine the amount of cuts.
Well, that's why we provided those budget summaries so that you could see what actual line items they're in. And it was 49 attachments.
So that did not have the previous year allocations. It just showed
Oh, they
the
did.
request for this year.
We have some of those on that we can get off the lot for presentation. Do we have that? All these presentations that we've done, the details.
I guess the main question on all the things is how much is compensation and how much is other stuff?
Well,
Well, if you recall,
On the budget.
you all asked for some departments to come forward and some departments you didn't. And it's not that we can't provide that information. I think it's just, that was not something that we had included. You'll have to let us, that information right now. We have absolutely no problem doing that. It's just that we just need to get a little time pulling this together.
And like I said, this was just in there to give you an idea of what we're looking at overall on the budget, but nothing changed from other than the schools from and that wasn't even given to you on the other sheet, but the big sheets that we had given out in the past, you can, or did we? No, we did.
If we need to, we need to research that, not research it, but just pull that together. Like I said, we weren't ready for that kind of discussion tonight. We didn't know that that's what I think that's what Chairman Stonehill was asking, is that if you all had some individual requests that you wanted to have included in the reductions, then we could include that and have that kind of discussion. Some of the things you're asking, we can certainly provide. I just don't know that we can do it for you immediately tonight. And we're happy to provide that level of detail. And I think that's, again, it's been the commonplace of the board to have specific departments come and kind of do an intensive line item by line item discussion. And some of the ones you're asking, we didn't have them on there. So, but doesn't mean that we can't get that information, and we'll certainly provide it. If we need to get that for another meeting, we'll be able to do that for another meeting as well. I'm sorry.
So am I still up?
So
Go ahead.
Mr. Dines is pulling up our budget summary. And so this is what you get on that big sheet, with the exception of the percentage of each budget that is salaries, if you notice over here. And it shows, I don't think we changed the date, but that fiscal year 2021 salary is really the 2022 salaries.
Do you have, is this available? Did we hand that out?
We
Can I
handed
give
that
this
out,
one?
yes. Not tonight.
I did hand it out, and I have it at home. Doesn't do much good, does it?
You're fine.
Just, how about? Don't need it? You're the one who got.
Donna, can you send us a copy tomorrow of this? Like a PDF or something? Or forward it, Chris could forward it to us now.
But it's kind of
think I-
hard to do a PDF of this because.
Or just send us the sheet. How's that? In Excel or whatever it's in.
Yes.
I have that.
I know I have the,
I'd rather do PDF if I can than to give a Excel out.
I got mine here, but
Just the latest.
all good.
Miller, there's 3 of them.
What's the date on that one?
Doesn't say 2023, 2022.
There should be a date.
In 2022.
Yeah, this is 3/9 here.
So, may I, Mr. Chair? We all seem to have, I think, the one that's dated 3/16/22.
Yes, and I've actually updated it with some numbers today.
Okay, so I think we all need that one because this is, yeah.
And I do apologize. I was so busy trying to get together the numbers on the tax information. That was what most of my
I'm
day.
sure. But, so,
Levita can go up and print
yeah, well,
a new sheet.
So we'll give you that sheet that'll be 4/6/22. And we'll get that
And
out
then
here
change.
in a real quick moment. If you give us a second,
is it,
well, more than a second.
Levita,
It's going to go do that.
you highlight the compensation versus the other, or is that too much?
It'll be a little bit smaller because that's in columns that aren't printed.
So, Mr. Chair, go ahead, I'm sorry, I'll take a break.
Sure, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Collins. I appreciate this. So is this reflected in?
No.
It's not reflected in this.
No.
So let's say, so all these revenues, if we were to leave it at the 350 tax rate, all those revenues would go up another 5.269 million.
Right.
Tracking. And I'm not real familiar with, I mean, that's a massive amount that the rate or the value of personal property has gone up. I don't remember seeing it this drastic ever. Is there because I know with like the every 4 years with the real estate assessment that there's the equalization process and you have to hold a public hearing if you don't want to be within the 1%. I'm not familiar with personal property though. Is there a similar situation in regards to that with like having to equalize and hold a public hearing or anything along those lines? Nothing. Okay.
I do know that Miss Hart indicated that the valuation was going to go up because of, whatever is it, what's the analytics group that they use that JD Power was saying that, personal property was going up. So
Yes, the things we had last year are actually worth more now this year.
Right.
Instead of depreciating, it's an unusual situation to see something like that.
Right.
Especially so drastically. So, okay. Understood. So then that would come into place. And if you said it, I'm sure you said it and I was rifling through stuff, so I apologize. So I appreciate all these different scenarios. You got general fund total revenues, you got general fund no cuts, schools level, general fund no cuts, school level, cap case 1. What's cap case 1 and cap case 2?
Capital case 1.
those are those scenarios that Kyle
Tracking. Okay.
Louch provided.
Yeah,
Okay.
one is the courthouse and the radio, and 2 is the courthouse, radio, firehouse.
Okay. And then the Senate version with those capital cases would be the delta of if the Senate provided the amount, or if the state provided the amount the Senate is recommending, the delta between what the schools are totally requesting and then what the Senate would provide, that bill would provide, right?
Right, that number was taken right out of Dr. Benson's
Yes.
presentation
Yes,
last
ma'am.
week
Tracking?
in your book.
And the Senate version, as Ms. Hahn indicated, that's the more rosier for schools. I think the House is a much more constrained.
Steer.
Yeah.
Yes, no, it is. It is. And then so there was also, as part of that Senate, there was the school construction line item, which was a unique idea in the fact that it's not, my understanding from Dr. Benson was this is not something that's you want to guarantee is going to be every year.
So many years ago, and I'm not sure how many years ago, the state used to provide funding to schools for construction.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it was across the state or if it was based on need. I'm really not sure. It was before I did school finance.
Okay.
And they took it away. And then, so that's when a lot of schools and localities went out to using the Virginia Public School bond sales to build or renovate, add on to schools.
Finance those
And so that's,
capital projects. Yep.
and I believe Dr. Benson, in the entire time he's been with the school system, I think it was back before he came.
Honestly, I was not familiar with that. So that's news to me. That's interesting. But I guess my question is.
So then again, like your question, I think was, he said that we don't know because this is the first time they brought it back in, I don't know how many years. And the governor is the one who, Governor Northam, before he went out, he is the one who
engineered.
Yes, yeah. to bring it back.
Okay.
And
part of my question is going to be then also talking about that. So we have our local composite index, which is 38.05%. That's what the state says we should be able to fund
of the
total school budget. No?
Of the SOQ.
Of the SOQ. Okay. And so that has nothing to do with that line item with the construction.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And the in there, that line item, when you use the calc tools for school financing, there is no local match on that capital.
There is no local match on that capital.
Right.
Okay. Okay. I think I'm tracking. I will allow someone else. I'm sure I will have more questions, but I will allow someone else to take a stab at asking some of themselves.
I'm going to ask 2 quick questions and then pass it on and come back later. I was looking I had asked you yesterday about the 49 different budgets. So I looked at them today, and one of the ones I I know it's a little amount, but I see it's only used for educational and recreational supplies. It's the litter control. Is that something that can be cut or needed?
That is something that we get the revenues offset the expenditures.
Was it,
So money that comes in, it's like a grant.
okay, so it's a
So
grant.
if you don't pick up any and submit for reimbursement, then there's no expenditure, no revenue.
Okay, that's what they asked. And then the others, I remember last week for the massive amount of new positions, I remember correctly, Dr. Benson said that none of them were SOQ.
Right.
Correct? They were not mandated. So that came to what figure, like
It was 1,899,000.
Like it was 1 point. It was so good.
All
$183.
right, because that is an area, because they were all non-mandated. They were just wants, correct? Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
as Dr.
Yes.
Benson said, it was, he felt it was a need, but it's not in the formula of the SOQ.
Okay, thank you.
So the $114 million, that's the 73 cents additional revenue, right?
That is personal property, which is, that's the small spreadsheet that you have,
The 114 million,
that the value of,
That's
it's
the,
gone up
personal property here in
$114
the
million,
Huh?
right?
Yes, let
the
me,
value has gone up. What you get is not going to be that.
Right, that's the second part of the question.
Yes.
So at $114 million,
I think you said it was about 5.2 million. Is that right?
Yes.
About 5.2 million was what it
more
would
than
generate.
last year.
that's
So
the personal property.
That's what you're asking, I thought.
I thought the 114 was real estate.
No,
no,
sir.
I don't know. I'm not sure what the delta on the,
So the vehicles and stuff has gone up 114 million.
Yes, sir.
yes, sir.
That's
The,
according to your revenue commissioner, Ms. Hart.
And the current tax rate is,
the current tax rate is $3.50.
$3.50 on 100.
so you mentioned last time that the cigarette tax revenue wasn't included.
So last year, we estimated the cigarette tax revenue for this year to be $4 million. And I have lowered that to 2.5 million because that's about what we
Expect it to
hopefully
finish.
expect to receive by the end of this fiscal year.
Was that included in your numbers?
Yes, sir.
So the original estimate of the cigarette tax was like 6 million. Or
Well, it was what it was explained to me was that it was estimated to be higher, but we went conservative or cut. Because when I first arrived, I had a conversation with Kyle from Davenport, and he had said that initial preliminary estimates were like 6 million, but I think we chose to go with 4 million. But Mr. Stonehill would know more about that. I believe he was on that committee.
well, you know the actual?
We think the actual, the way it will finish out this fiscal year will be around 2.5. Maybe a little higher, maybe 2.6, but right now it's trending in that direction.
I can look at where we're at today.
Didn't Ms. Hart give you the difference in real estate values?
Her office did, yes.
What's that number?
What's that
For
number?
her office.
No, he's asking what that number is.
Oh, the value. Let me,
How much did it increase in value?
And if you recall from,
Personal property was 114 million. God knows what the real estate value went up.
and I think that's a fair point. I mean, obviously, until Ms. Hahn can give you that, I'll refresh your memory to last week when Kyle explained that the value of a penny because of the reassessment went from 275 to $390,000. So, clearly the valuation has contributed a lot of revenue growth, and that was presented in those capital analyses that he provided.
I believe that, just for clarification, I believe it went from 275 to 390.
Yes.
Okay. Did you say 390? I misheard you. If you did, I apologize.
Yes. 390.
Per penny.
So last year, the land values were, and I'm not sure if I'm reading this correct because I'm not familiar with their, the land values in the county were 1,172,000, I mean, no, 1,172,047,200. And the buildings were worth 1,904,811,800.
So is that the new numbers
That was from the last,
for this assessment?
before the assessment.
And so in the composite index, just to share, the state used, at least for King George, land valuation at $3,927,157,616. So, yeah. I sent an email for the school board meeting.
So from one of these reports that she ran for me, the taxable land value, which the other didn't split out, so I can only think that was all taxable. But the land values were 1,437,752,300. So the land itself increased, it looks like roughly 300 million. And then on the improvements, meaning your buildings, the improvements at 2,765,364. I'm sorry, let me back up. 2,765,364,100.
So that's about 800,000.
Yeah.
800 million, excuse me.
Yes.
So the total increases for buildings and property is 1.some billion. And at the current 73 cents, that would be how much?
Well, that's on that spreadsheet that you have, the big one,
Mhm.
not the expenditure one, but the one I handed out at the beginning of tonight.
Right.
I've got it broken out by just 73 cents on the real estate tax because it's 73 cents on the 100, I think, or is it 1,000 in real estate? Oh, it's on 100. So that figure, and I've got my papers every which way here. That figure at 73 is 29,013,772.
That figure is what? At 73?
At 73 cents, it's the $29,013,772.
So looking at the sheriff line item on the salaries for last year was 4,443,447. Salary increase of 81% would be 1,055,000, but the increase on this page is only 657. What haven't I figured out?
I don't know. That's just the salary.
That's what he's saying, is it, why did we show 600?
Because the overall budget increase right here is 327.
Right.
Yes.
So there should be, what I think Mr. Collins is saying is that there's a difference of, that we presented to them of like 600 something, right?
So that you have the 327,000 for the sheriff. You have 293,000 for E911 and 35,627 for animal control. It's those lines
So the sheriff, E911
and
and
animal control.
animal control on the sheet is 657,149 on this sheet.
Yes, but if
On
you
this-
look at, Mr.
Sheriff.
Collins, if you look at the 2020 adopted, the column that's past where it says FY23 budget in the green, then the next column is the 2022 adopted versus preliminary. And what Ms. Hahn is saying is that you go down to the sheriff, it's 327,237. Then you add in E911, which was 293,011. And then you add in animal control at 35,627. That should equal 657.
So help me understand this chart. On the yellow or the oranges to the far right, under sheriff's salaries, just the sheriff, 4,443,474 for 2022, right? And the increase, 81%, is that it's an increase to this year, is what we're speaking of, or is it an increase from what?
Not the percentage increase, but the percentage of his budget that is salary.
Okay, 81% is salaries. But then the final less salaries, what does that mean?
That takes the 5,498,772 less the 4,443,474.
So,
So in other words, his non-salary, non-personnel expenses are 1,055,000.
okay, so that's what
That's
we were
just
asking
in the
earlier.
sheriff's side. You also then have to factor in E911 and the animal control.
So the 1,055,298 is other stuff.
Yes.
Okay, that's what we were looking for in the beginning. Thank you.
Well, we got there.
Does salary include VRS, benefits and everything,
Yes,
or is
sir.
it just, it is loaded, fully loaded? Tracking.
Donna, what is if we equalized all the what is the cents?
The 55 cents.
So 55 is, and then
It's the closest.
is the closest. And then the second question for that is, if we funded everything on here, what would the tax rate have to be?
We funded everything on here. It would have to be higher than
73?
Well,
78.
But
Oh, the higher
But-
than 70.
We went to, I'm sorry. If you funded all of the general fund requests, all of the schools at the highest amount and the highest on the capital needs, at 78 cents, you're 48,000 short.
that's not taking into account the personal property tax.
Right,
changes, which
right.
if those were left the same as well, we would end up seeing like nearly $5 million increase.
Yes.
In revenue.
And I would have liked to have had time to go back and add that in
Understood.
here.
I just wanted to,
Just that there's
for visualization. Thank
two
you.
taxes in play that have
Mhm.
very significant ranges.
But I think the important point, Donna, though, is that, so this is this very last one, correct? The general fund with cuts, schools, the House version, and the capital case scenario 2. And you're saying that's where it's 48,000 short.
If you didn't, I'm sorry, if you didn't cut, the general fund at all, if you funded everybody with all the requests at the higher House version for the schools, you'd be 402,000 short.
Right.
Instead of 48,000, not including personal property tax increase, depending on where we go with that.
So
With
the
tax
schools,
rate.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, can I have another go? Yes. So the schools in their budget, there was like a $1.9 million in
New position.
equipment.
Oh,
It was 1,147,000, I think. I'll get that real quick. Oops, it was for new equipment, it was, and this is not just equipment, but services and supplies. So they have to contract out some services. And then, of course, like I mentioned earlier, paper and those kind of things. But that total was $1,173,388.
$1 million.
$173,388.
Their increase in personnel was
Their increase in the new positions or
two positions.
new positions, 1,899,483.
Got all that somewhere. And their compensation was
The compensation is to
5%.
a 5% across the board for all staff. And of course, I believe he did mention that in the Senate version, they're including a 5%. The House version is including a 4%.
Almost $2 million for positions.
I'm sorry? Yes.
It's $3 million. $3 million more just for pay raises.
The schools have over 700 employees.
In my time on 8 years, so last year budget was 605 employees. And this year it's an increase by all these employees, but there's only 21 more students. So I don't know how 21 more students make up all those services and equipment. So the only thing that really would, I'm sorry, Ms. Cuthman. The only thing that, when you talk about state's mandate, is the special ed stuff. But a lot of the other stuff is not really mandated. So I'm curious how many of the 21 students need additional services.
May I just chime in? So I get where you're coming from, Mr. Collins. The only caution that I would add, you're talking about 21 students, is we seem to have suffered from the schools not offering in-person instruction to students. And it seems as though perhaps they have identified students beyond just that number, that 21, who have more needs than they did before.
That's correct.
And I'm just
Yeah,
saying,
the state is going to give them
So,
Money for that particular, the loss of learning? That's what you speak of?
and I tried to make this point last year this time is I would love to see the state money carried somewhere in the revenue side of the school budget because it doesn't ever seem to happen that way. So to see what they'd be using some of the state money for those needs. Yeah.
So the $2.4 million for that Senate, we can't even really consider that. That's just a freebie if it happens for them.
Well, that 2.4, if it does happen, can only be used for new construction or debt services. So it would kind of be like a wash with the county, is that they would give us that and then we'd give them back the 2.4. And I don't have the number right in front of me right now, but the debt service for just for schools is 4 million plus out of our 8 million that we have. So half of the county debt is for schools.
My only concern with going down that road is then so if that money doesn't come in next year, like let's say that they did do the 2.5 million for the debt service stuff, and then it doesn't come in next year, essentially then it's like their budget shrunk by 2.5 million then. So it does have future ramifications depending on if it continues to get funded.
But hopefully they would use it for some of the capital,
Well, make it,
CTE building and those type of things.
Roddy, you could have it as a placeholder in your CIP, going into later on in the year when we start to develop the CIP, there's 2.3 that the schools, we could apply to the schools for some of their CIP projects. I mean, we know, I'm not saying that's not going to pay for a preschool, but some of the other things that they also have on there.
You would pay for engineering for a preschool.
That's correct.
May I add something, Mr. Chair? So I actually, my colleague and I had a conversation about this last week, and I took a look back in the state budget and how that bill was written is that so I just want to make sure everybody knows the money, if that pans out, goes directly to the school divisions. It doesn't go to the locality. So we can make all the suggestions we want about what we think they should do with it, but it is in fact up to the school board. It's not up to the governing body, if that comes to fruition, how they would spend it, because it's never going to come to us first. So I just want to make sure everybody knows that.
You're right. And hopefully that the school board would to continue a good relationship with the Board of Supervisors. I would think that they would
You need to tell them that.
take care of some capital projects that were on their list.
I will say this,
Yeah.
and then I think Ms. Hahn had something she wants to say, but we had a capital project that was revenue that was only for the schools. And we, obviously applied it, and it went it was for the roof, right? Wasn't there revenue in there that we paid
yes.
for that? So, I mean, it could be something you could still have in your CIP. I mean, because I would be very concerned about if that money comes to the schools directly and you don't have some degree of say in what you would want something that's designated capital to go to capital. You don't want to find out that they were funding it to buy supplies.
And
I would hope that you would all have a say in that matter, but I realize that maybe you don't.
And two, my concern with the 2.4 million is that under the Senate version, they're saying that they would only need 20 million from us, but that 2.4 million was calculated in the revenue received from the state. So if they keep that 2.4 million, then they're going to ask for more money from general fund to cover all the expenditures.
So last year they got how much?
From the state,
From-
from us, we funded them at 18 million even.
That's right. And this year they won $7 million more than that.
Well, that was back on that one slide,
4 million from local, right?
2 million and something to 2,436,625 between there and $5,578,234. That's over the 18 million.
So I think that if you take away some of the stuff, stuff, focus on compensation all the way up and down the board is probably the most priority for schools, for the sheriff, fire and rescue, for public works, for parks and rec. Some of the stuff maybe could go by the wayside this time.
I know one of the biggest things we've always heard from the teachers is, compensation. So I agree with that point, that to pay them more to get them to stay.
And this may not be appropriate, and I'll probably get beat down for it, but I found that compensation doesn't make people stay.
I agree with that too.
Environment.
There's a lot of things they want more than that, and
We need
maybe
to
respect
compete.
is one.
Yeah, we need to compete with Stafford and Spotsylvania. We'll never be able to fully compete, but we need to at least be in a reasonable amount of compensation. I can tell you that in my 8 years on the school board, that their compensation has gone up every single year. So it's like close to 40% increase in 8 years. So that's not. Remember one year the Board of Supervisors did a salary comparison in all the areas, and they gave them a huge chunk of money. I don't know. I think Mr. Granger was here. Yep. And so, they are competing with the other divisions. I don't think that we should go the opposite direction in compensation. I think we should compete in compensation with all the others and maybe get rid of some of the stuff. I don't know all the numbers from tonight, which would be important to know what to make an advertisement for a tax rate. If we don't know the answers to that, it's hard to kind of even throw out a number.
You can't, obviously, I wouldn't vote on setting the tax rate without that information, but we could advertise at a rate that's higher and then come down at the public hearing. So
What's the higher number?
So that's without some of that information, I appreciate what you're saying. You're not going to know what the number is, so you have to kind of aim high and leave some of those cuts out at the moment, and then figure out what else we can cut as we move forward. And hopefully we can do that in the next couple of meetings. I assume it in the next couple of weeks as well.
We're here to keep meeting.
Huh?
We're here to keep meeting as long as you guys want to keep meeting.
So
They're so much fun.
what's the thought of the board as in a tax rate number? Given the unknowns.
It's a great question, especially because we have two tax rates that we have to consider. And they both have significant deltas compared to last year. So I'm going to ask my colleagues, I guess, from the school's perspective, is there like a top end that you guys are looking at? Like, I'm not looking to fund more than X dollars. Does anyone have anything? I will throw out an idea I had, and you are welcome to shoot it full of holes if you want. I know that, so Ms. Hahn, as she said, the local composite index is for the SOQs. But if we just wanted to say, looking at how much the state's going to give us and say we would be 38.05% of whatever the state gives plus our amount. So to try to work your way backwards, if it was the Senate's, that would top out at 1.87 million, an increase from the locality. So, and then if it was the House, it would be a $1.44 million increase. And so I'm just, I guess, to generate discussion, I'm throwing that out as a high water mark of what I was considering.
Richard, would you so is that above the 18 or above the 20?
I'm sorry, that would be above our current funding level. So we currently, this current fiscal year, we funded at 18 million. So it would be
1.4 and
be
then,
19. So if it was the Senate's, it would be 19,870,000 so for an increase of 1.87 million to the current
okay.
local contribution. That was, and that's just working your way backwards from that 38.05%. That was what I was thinking. But if someone has a different idea, I'm certainly, I'm just trying to, get the ball rolling on maybe putting a number down that we could start from to look at.
So the personal property, it's at 350 now. I was rounding the 3.25 number. But the real estate tax, I've thought about a lot of different numbers. I understand the whole theory about high and going low, but we know we can't do 70. Well, we don't know that. I know I can't do 73 cents. I was thinking about something in the middle, which is 64, around 64. But that's just for advertisement.
I know for the personal property tax with the valuation, especially on the higher end vehicles, that staying at 350 or above would be a huge, tremendous hit for a lot of people. And it just can't.
Well, you're right. I mean, everybody's been hit continually. There's no doubt about that.
Well, and
You gotta have
for
antique
some,
cars. There's no personal property tax on those.
not everybody can afford an antique car.
May I, Mr. Chair? So I would consider coming in at 325 on the personal property tax rate. That's going to give us an excess over fiscal year 2022 of just over $4.2 million. And then if you look at, I would advertise a little higher than what Mr. Collins proposed at 68 cents. Would still give us a cushion to lower it if we thought we could. Because if you track down even the red, the vast majority, except for the general fund no cut schools house cap case 2 is $4.3 million, which is more than the $4.2 million in personal property tax revenue. Every other red column at 68 cents, we could still satisfy at 325 on the personal property tax rate.
Is that with any cuts to the budget as presented? So would that fully fund what the schools wanted and the newest spreadsheet we got?
So that, the only one that's not going to fully fund at 68 cents, if you scroll down to general fund, no cuts, schools house cap case 2, the difference is 4.376 million. And we'd be generating at $3.25, 4.214. So we'd be off by about 100,000 right there.
That's if we wanted to fund everything.
That's if these numbers are right, it says no cuts and the schools, the house case 2 scenario, which is the more costly, right? Yes.
I would agree on that. 68.
So I'd be looking to advertise real estate at 68 and personal property at $3.25. And that kind of, that would be high, advertising high. That still gives us another quarter on personal property and 5, maybe 3 to 5 cents on real estate. A cushion. And we've already factored in the worst case scenarios for the school budget with the worst case scenario state funding for the school budget too.
So that number, the 68 and the 3.25, so there's still room for equipment cuts.
I think what it does though is just leaves it open that it just leaves it open. So, but yes, we can go down from there, definitely. But once you advertise, you can't go up. And so this would be the absolute lowest, the absolute highest we could go if everyone is amenable to that.
I would be. You need a consensus or you need a motion?
Correct. We would in order to advertise. Correct. We would. Yes.
I would be, as long as we understand that we might make some more cuts once we get on the numbers.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question of staff? So I just want to make sure I am reading that right. The way that I just described that, I read that correctly, and that would be within 100,000 at that high end number, right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And I guess I'd like to also maybe just mention, if you're not certain, I guess going back to my calendar in my head, if you met again on Wednesday of next week and set it, that's 30 days. You then could hold your public hearing the night that you technically have to have a school budget to them, the 15th of May. So you could still, you would be okay. This gives you, right now, if you did it right now, you're fine. But I'm just saying that if you are not ready to make that commitment, I know Mr. Collins is asking that we adjust to the living wage. Well, the living wage is $15.41 an hour, and the state minimum wage is going up to $12 next year. I'm not against it. I'm just saying that we would have to adjust it. We do have people that are obviously at that bottom level that we would need to be bringing up, and I don't know that there's a ton of them, but it's.
I was wondering how many. I can't imagine there would be more than 15, but I have no idea. But even though if you took some money from another pot in equipment and you put it towards that, you would still work out.
But what I'm hearing from Mr. Miller is we don't have to decide tonight. If we were to hold another meeting next Wednesday, we'd still be within that 30-day time frame. And so we can, and then have a little more information, hopefully, to make a more informed decision. Yeah,
I'm not trying to, advocate that you put it off. If you're ready to go, you just want to be high enough so that you come back down, you're in a comfort zone.
I would like to wait till next week if everyone else is amenable to that. I would like to not advertise at that height. I'll be honest with you. That's still a lot. It's going to be a big impact to the citizens. I mean, us up here as well. I mean, it has an impact. So I'll leave to my colleagues though, but.
Mr. Chair, may I agree. I just was throwing out a number to say, hey, no cuts, worst case scenario, here's where I'm at. I would be happy to wait a week and get some more information. So I wasn't necessarily looking for a motion. I know that we would need that to advertise, but yeah, I can wait a week. I just was putting out kind of where I was at, what I was thinking, and what my rationale was, how I got there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I mean, for the sake of having further discussion, if there's some general fund items that you want to discuss right now, we can put that list back up there, the ones that we're recommending be reduced. If there's more that you want to reduce, then let's do it now, or at least give us some idea so that we can present to you something that's a more fixed number going in next week. And then you could adjust down if you need to, or you can adjust up. I mean, if we do this state living wage, that's going to add some, not significant, but it'll add some to the budget.
So I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you, sir. I appreciate the spreadsheet that you guys put together real quick. would it be possible to get the information of, so let's say you're looking at the budget and you're looking at, let's say sheriff. And so you see the FY22 adopted versus preliminary of $327,237. So that's the change in the request for funds that for this year versus last year. Of that $327,237, what percentage of that increase is just due to salaries and benefits?
Would you like to see that for each department?
So I think Mr. Collins was asking about that. And so I think it'd be good. Am I correct in that understanding, Mr. Collins?
Yes, sir. And
Okay.
I'd like to be delineated a little bit more into what the other stuff is.
So then, yeah, if it's, I'm just throwing a number out. If it's $200,000 that you're increasing salaries for the sheriff, like 200,000 of that increases for salaries, then you're like, all right, well, it's 127 for non-salaries and you know what that may be. So I don't.
Let's say you say 127,000. If you can delineate it just a little bit, 127,000. You know, what are those things? Because I think that there's probably things in there that you wouldn't want to cut.
I'm sure there are. Yeah, no, I agree. And so that was, like I said, it was just throwing a number out just to try to.
Okay, but I mean, in fairness to my staff, you guys you recommended that we have certain departments come and
Yes.
give you a intensive line item.
Yep.
Are you wanting us to go to that level again?
No.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure because I don't want to re-legislate stuff if we've already gone over, you know, but if there's some specific areas that you want, then that's fine. We can provide that information, correct? Okay.
Well, with the compensation change, it's hard to see the granularity.
Right, and I agree. You're right.
And if it's possible, I know we're looking at next Wednesday. I don't know when you'd be able to have that information, but whenever it is ready, could it be sent instead of waiting until the meeting to look at it?
Yes, and so I've got a lot on my plate over the next
ma'am.
several days
Yes, ma'am.
because we also are beginning the Service Authority budget work sessions next Tuesday night.
Okay. Understood.
And I've got meetings set up a better part of the morning well, all morning tomorrow
Okay.
with Service Authority.
But we definitely, giving it to you the night of is obviously that we understand. We will get this to you. I think that, you know, obviously we're also in a gap between a regular board meeting and another regular board meeting. So I think, you know, we can definitely get it to you.
Could we, and I know it's just one more day, but if we push to Thursday, would the extra day help as well to just, and I don't know if my colleagues would be available then, but I know that's the 14th and we're saying the 15th, so you'd have to put out the advertisement. And so just trying to figure that out.
And I think the reason that we had switched the Service Authority meeting instead of being the 14th to the 12th is because that's the Thursday before Good Friday.
Oh, yeah, it is. You're right. You're right. It's a good point. Yeah. No,
We'll meet
okay.
if you need it, but I think we can get this. And if we have to push the Service
Pete and I are
Authority,
going to tag team and I'm
Okay.
going to take one and two.
but we'll get it to you.
Okay.
And I think that, you know, I think that Ms. Hahn did a good job in terms of, you know, putting this kind of this analysis of what this matrix for you of what tax rates look like if you do certain things. And I think that was what we spent a lot of time because we wanted to make sure that you had a clear picture of what it could generate. And it's not just us, it was working with the folks in Revenue Commissioner as well. So.
But when you get that ready and you send it, can you just send me an email so I can come pick it up in paper? I'm a paper guy. You
So
know,
what we can do is send it out to everyone and let you know. We'll send the attachment with it and then say if you'd rather a hard copy that you can come by and pick it up.
yeah,
So that I'm sending.
a hard
I'm very
But
telling
yeah,
you.
so I'm sending the same thing to each one of you.
So, Mr. Chairman, the Citizen Advisory Board, they haven't really weighed in on any of this. I was curious where they're at.
I was just getting ready to ask you guys. It's been like trying to, you know, follow along with numbers and I just forgot all about you. I'm sorry. So questions?
Wow, this has been fascinating. I don't really have a question. I just have a comment, and I promise I'll be brief. And I honestly don't know if this comment should be directed toward you or the school board. But salary scales and salary increases look great, and they are great to recruit new teachers. But if you want to keep your teachers, you need to look at other things like retirement benefits, matching 403Bs, healthcare upon retirement, and things like that. That's all I want to say.
Last year, the schools did do this healthcare 5 years. I can't remember all the details, but they worked on that some.
Chapman?
Yes. So really quickly, following all the numbers, I've gotten lost in that. So what is the current tax rate? Is that the 55?
No, the current tax rate is 73 cents on the 100. And I know I threw out a lot of big numbers. If you notice the change in the value of the real estate, I think we were saying like total, what was it, like 800 million, somewhere roughly around there.
1.1 billion.
1.1 billion.
1.1 billion
Billion.
for both everything.
Property and buildings, yes.
Okay. And then finally, in looking at the sheet that you provided here, with regard to the schools, there are new positions that they're asking for that are not SQL, correct? Am I saying that correctly?
SOQ.
SOQ.
Standards of quality.
Okay, so those positions is something that this board could look at.
They can't
necessarily.
look at the positions, they look at the dollars, and then it's up to the school board to decide what to do with the dollars that the county provides.
But for purpose, I guess for my question is, then the
They
board could
can
look
use
at
that.
saying it's a smaller dollar amount for that.
So what's the state does, the SOQ is the minimum amount for a school. So if you have, I'm not, these aren't the exact numbers, but if you have 800 students, you need one principal, you need one assistant principal. So, if you're in 5th grade, you need this many students per teacher. So, but the state doesn't fund the 100% package. That's what's been going on for years. So they drop it onto the locality to where I'm guessing about half their positions are funded SOQ. It's very, very minimal. So they've been trying to get the locality they have been getting the locality to take this lion's share of the SOQ, which is a huge problem.
And right, because what Mr. Collins is stating, if you, I don't know if he provided books for you all on the school's budget, but in here he'll mention what the required local effort is, and it's below what we funded for the current year. So localities are always financing more than what the state says that the local share should be.
That doesn't even include the SOQs. So last year the state says the composite index, you should fund a minimum of 15 million for supervisors, 18 million, but the 15 million didn't cover the SOQ employees. It's not in there.
Right, because the state also does their own calculations on what they feel that the salaries should be and the compensation. So when they build into the budget, say a 5% or a 4% increase in salaries, the money it's not apples to apples. It's not based on what King George is paying. It's, I think, based on maybe an average of all the localities. I'm not sure where they come up with their numbers, but it's never based on what our salaries are.
So like a school system like Buckingham County, their resources are very limited. So they try to even things out with the composite index. But that doesn't, the composite index and the SOQ are two different ball games.
Anyone else?
Okay, so we'll, 5:30, 13th. Okay, and this is just informational for the Service Authority members. It'll be at the sheriff's office. However, Mr. Dines has informed me that he will not be there to record. So he has the planning commission who is going to be in this room that same night at the same time. And so we're going to try to figure out some way to televise it, but I'm just letting you know that we may not have that option. Not that we're trying to mess anything up, but it's just that you got competing meetings. Yes, the Service Authority next Tuesday at 5:30 at the sheriff's office. And we'll let all of the board members know.
So you did say Wednesday. You did say something about.
You all were going to meet on
Thursday?
Wednesday.
13th.
Supervisors Wednesday, the 13th. If we need to move it to the 14th, we'll let you know. But right now, I think their hope is to get it for the 13th.
It's the 50th. Our meeting is the 13th at 5:30.
Supervisors
Where?
here.
Here? And what's the one at the sheriff's office?
That would be the Service Authority.
The day before?
Yes, sir.
What time is that?
I think they set it at 5:30. I should say, I guess I need to check and see if LaWanda can tell me if this, I believe we were good. We were good all of the time. She usually texts me and says it's good. So I'm assuming it is. If not, we'll let you know.
So, Mr. Chair, about the television, being, I think the planning commission, especially what they're going through their ordinance and stuff, is important to be televised. But I also think this meeting is.
No, this meeting will be televised. I'm saying that we are working on details out about the Service Authority. I'm sorry, I probably confused everybody, so my fault. So the Tuesday meeting for the Service Authority will not be here. It will be at the sheriff's office. And because there's a planning commission meeting on that same night, Mr. Dines cannot cannot do what they do normally for these meetings for the Service Authority. We're working on a plan to have a Google type of broadcast or something like that. So that doesn't concern you guys, this board.
No, it doesn't, but it does.
Well, I'm not suggesting that it doesn't concern you. I'm saying that doesn't affect your meeting on the 13th.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I think we're all set. We have a motion?
I move to adjourn until Wednesday, April 13th at 5:30 PM in the boardroom.
Second.
We have a motion properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. We are adjourned.